You're never going to control your sexual desire. Ever. And you know why? Because you're not the master, you're the servant. The pleasure you chase night after night isn't freedom. It's cheap anesthesia for a pain you're too scared to face. So here's the question. If discipline and morality were enough, why do you keep looping back to the same cycle? Promise, impulse, relief, guilt, and right after, the same old emptiness. You like to believe you're in charge, but your unconscious is the one driving. And it doesn't ask for your opinion, it just acts. Here's the hard truth. You think you're rational, but the one grabbing the wheel is your shadow, and you don't even notice. Carl Jung said we all have unacknowledged, buried parts that keep running the show even when we pretend they don't exist. That's the shadow. When you don't face that side, you run from inner silence like someone fleeing a dark room. In that escape, pleasure turns into an anesthetic. Fast, intense, and totally non-healing. This video isn't about demonizing desire. It's about understanding why it dominates you when it should be the other way around. We'll get into how media and social platforms have hotwired your brain to live from hit to hit. We'll unpack how your own shadow rigs your choices. And most importantly, I'll lay out a practical path to stop being a slave to the loop. The roadmap's simple. 5 blocks of understanding, 1 practical pivot, and closing questions that can completely change how you see pleasure. If you're tired of sprinting after relief and waking up to the same void, this one's for you. Ever notice how you're great at self-sabotage without even clocking it? Kinda a hidden talent. That part running things backstage. Jung called it the shadow. And no, it's not a horror movie vibe. It's just everything you won't admit about yourself. The catch? When you ignore it, that part starts calling the shots. You think you're in charge, but you're really the psychic reciting lines you didn't write. So how does this shadow speak up? Through desire. But don't get it twisted. It's not a craving for chocolate or a sudden urge to trade in your car. It's a thirst for anesthesia. Pleasure turns into an emotional painkiller, numbs the sting for a few minutes, fixes nothing. You chase anything that promises quick relief. Maybe you buy an online course you'll never watch, stalk your ex under the excuse of just curious, or binge totally random live streams at 3 a.m. like it's mission critical. Here's a classic scene. You swear today you'll be productive. Then you remember you could quickly reorganize your sock drawer. 2 hours later, you're comparing organizer prices on Mercado Libre and reading raving reviews about non-slip hangers. Outcome: 0 progress on real projects, but that fake few I did something glow. That's the shadows theater, keeping you busy so you don't face the real discomfort. And here's the kicker. The more you run from it, the bigger it gets. It's like stuffing dirty laundry under the bed. Works for a minute until the whole room starts to reek. The shadow does the same. The more you pretend it doesn't exist, the more it leaks into your tone, your wild justifications, and those odd urges you won't say out loud. Then you wonder why your life keeps running in circles. Now for the part no one likes hearing. Desire isn't the villain. It's the messenger. You keep shooting the messenger like that's gonna solve it. Desire is a note slid under the door saying, "Hey, look inside. You've been dodging this for a while." It's just easier to blame the beer, Netflix, or that miracle course impulse than to admit something real is asking for your attention. And here's the real flip. Desire can be a handcuff or a doorway. Ignore it and it drags you by the leash. Face it and it points to the mess behind the noise. What used to feel like emptiness starts turning into a map, which leaves the uncomfortable question. If desire is a message, what's your shadow been screaming that you're still pretending not to hear? If there's a storefront for desire in this world, it's Instagram and TikTok. Doesn't matter how you walk in, you might start with a recipe video, and a few minutes later you've slipped into dance trends, barely there outfit challenges, or influencers who figured out a body gets more clicks than any talent. The line is always cynical. It's just a trend. It's just humor. But you see the play. It's not humor. It's provocation dressed up as entertainment. And the worst part? It works. The algorithm learned how to poke your shadow without asking permission. It drops little stimulus breadcrumbs in front of you, hoping you'll behave like a trained dog. A slow-mo gym set, a makeup close-up with a parted lip pose, a clothing live where the model seems way more concerned with angles than the outfit. You're not choosing, you're being conditioned. What's wild is how everyone loves to play critic. These apps are full of cheap tactics, outrageous. That's the public stance. In private, the same person's sharing clips in the friends group, saving videos to a hidden folder, or commenting with a fire emoji. The issue isn't just what platforms serve up, it's the collective hypocrisy that feeds the loop. Deep down, nobody wants to quit their dopamine in disguise. Want non-cliché examples? Notice how even travel videos get sexualized. The thumbnail isn't the beach, it's the filmer's tan body. Podcasts, they start with economics and suddenly the viral clip is about sex life. Even gameplay turned into a stage. Streamers conveniently pick strategic outfits and angles. It's all calculated. This isn't about content. It's about keeping you hooked on, maybe the next one's better. Here's my straight-up invite. Drop a comment on what you think about this everyday sexualization. Is it just part of modern life? Or are we genuinely numbed out? Tell me where you're watching from. Too, I want to see how far this perception goes. And yeah, hit like and subscribe because if we don't use the algorithm in our favor, it'll keep using us as currency. One last nudge. If even the platforms you use to unwind have turned into catalogs of desire, what's that doing to your mind without you noticing? Maybe the move isn't to unplug everything, but to actually see the mechanism grinding behind the barrage. And that's exactly where the next point starts exposing the real trap. You might believe you're a rational being, but the truth is your desire was born millions of years before your reason. It doesn't ask permission, it barges in. It's a primal force like fire. It can warm or it can destroy. And here's the part most people don't like to hear. You're not going to kill desire. Anyone preaching that is living in La La Land. At best, you learn to steer that energy instead of becoming its hostage. So there are two paths. Pleasure as escape or pleasure as expansion. On the first, you use pleasure to shut anxiety up. It's like hitting the mute button so you don't hear the noise inside. It works for a few minutes, then the volume comes back even louder. Pleasure as expansion is a different game. You're present, and when it's over you feel stronger, more whole. It's the difference between gulping water just because you're parched and taking a sip knowing you're actually nourishing your body. And look how this shows up day to day. The guy who loves to play the moralist but carries secret fantasies that blow up the minute stress spikes. He says, I don't need that. And life proves him wrong at the first crack. Or the woman who confuses obsession with love and calls it irresistible chemistry. What looks like a whirlwind romance is often just anxiety dressed up as Cupid. Know someone like that? Maybe you've been that person. It's not just everyday folks either. History is packed with leaders, entrepreneurs, and public figures who lost everything because they never integrated their own impulses. Sex scandals, hidden addictions, decisions made in the heat of obsession. It wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was a lack of awareness. Desire doesn't care about resumes. It'll take down a CEO or a priest just the same if they buy the lie that just control it and you're fine. Here's the irony. Lots of people think being free means giving in to every impulse, as if freedom were the absence of breaks. That's not freedom. That's slavery dressed up as choice. Real freedom is feeling desire without getting dragged by it. It's choosing whether that fire cooks your meal or burns your house down. Nobody teaches this in school, but everyone pays a steep price for not learning it. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. If you can't kill desire, only guide it, how do you actually do that? How do you turn something so raw and inevitable into an ally instead of an enemy? That's the next step we need to crack. Together. You keep believing you fell in love because you found someone special, one of a kind. But nope, the truth is more uncomfortable. You didn't fall for the person. You fell for the part of yourself you've always tried to bury. That's projection. Jung called it ages ago. What you deny in yourself, you see as brilliance in the other. It's not destiny. It's need dressed up as an epiphany. Wanna look? The man who spends his life playing rigid and proper, never stepping out of line. That same man drops to his knees for the wild, free woman who does everything he never allowed himself to do. He thinks she holds the secret, but she doesn't. It's his own spontaneity, locked up tight, yelling to be free. He'd rather call it love, because admitting he's been an accomplice to his own prison is harder. And the woman who loves the controlling guy, who swoons over the man who sets the rules, measures every step she takes, keeps her constantly on alert. That's not love, that's a projected shadow. She handed over the strength she won't own and mistakes it for protection. She calls it chemistry, but it's just fear dressed up as passion. The proof? Her heart's not beating with joy, it's pounding with tension. If you live on high alert, sorry, that's not a soulmate. That's anxiety wearing expensive perfume. The sign couldn't be clearer. If someone keeps you on edge, it's not because love is intense. It's because your wound found a stage. That rush you confuse with butterflies? It's just cortisol. Real love doesn't park you on the edge of a panic attack. It brings peace. Simple. If you're decoding signals like you're in a spy game, it's not romance. It's trauma replaying the scene. The irony? You still call it fate. But I don't choose who I fall for. Oh, you don't? Or is your shadow choosing for you and you're just signing off on it? It's comfier to romanticize chaos than to admit your inner mess has been picking your partners. Destiny? Nah, it's your disowned self using someone else as a mirror. Which brings the uncomfortable question. If you're stuck in this loop, how do you tell when it's your shadow rigging your vision and when it's the real thing? Because if you don't learn to tell the difference, you'll spend a lifetime collecting chemistries that were just relapses of your own wound. Time for the truth. Every time you chase a shortcut to pleasure just to quiet the discomfort, you betray yourself. Not exaggerating, it's betrayal. You know who you'd like to be, but you pick the opposite just to get a few minutes of relief. It's like selling your integrity for a breath mint, and then you still wonder why you feel empty all the time. Emptiness isn't bad luck. It's the bill for self-betrayal coming due. Here's the part that stings. Freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like. That "I'm free because I do what I want" line is just teen rebel fantasy. Real freedom is not needing to do it. It's staring down the impulse, feeling the temptation, and still not getting dragged by it. If you can't say no to your desire, you're not free, you're a slave. A slave with gold handcuffs, sure, but a slave nonetheless. In practice, an impulse is just a signal. It's the fire alarm blaring. You can sprint around like a maniac trying to cover your ears, or you can pause, breathe, and check where the smoke's coming from. Chasing it blindly is like handing your house keys to a thief and asking him to watch the place. Sounds absurd, but that's exactly what you do when you let desire call the shots. And the irony? You tell yourself you're enjoying life. Go ahead. Stuff yourself with escape pleasure and wake up with an emotional hangover. You wake up feeling used by yourself. And sure, it's easier to say, "I needed that," than to admit, "I sold myself out again." Self-betrayal is quiet, but it stacks up like lead. One day you realize you don't even recognize who you've become. Now, think with me. If every impulse is a message, not a command, the question isn't, how do I kill desire? But how do I translate what it's trying to say? That reframing changes everything. Desire doesn't have to be the enemy, but it does need to be put in its place. Because when you hand over the house keys, there's no point complaining that someone trashed the inside. This is the turn. Treat impulse not as an enemy to crush, but as a compass to read. Problem is, reading it takes calm, maturity, and stepping off autopilot, which raises the big question for what comes next. If desire can be a compass, how do you read the map without losing yourself all over again? You don't tame desire by beating it into submission, but you can train your brain not to keep chasing cheap rewards. For that, you need a practical routine, not complicated theory. Think of it like a survival manual. Each exercise teaches your mind that pleasure doesn't have to be a shortcut. It can be a build. Here's a simple protocol to start today. Daily physical activity. Your body has to burn off pent-up energy or it turns into anxiety. 30 minutes of walking, light jogging, biking, or even playing with the dog already makes a difference. No time? Go with quick sets. 20 squats, 10 push-ups, 3 minutes of jump rope. This isn't about performance. It's about signaling to your brain there's a healthy outlet for tension. Short meditation, 5 to 10 minutes. You don't need to become a monk, you need to practice presence. Put your phone on airplane mode, sit in a comfortable chair, and just focus on the breath. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back. This small drill teaches your brain that silence isn't the enemy. It's a reset space. Do it in the morning or before bed. Mental hygiene. Creative hobbies. Pleasure can be used for expansion, not escape. Write 10 lines a day, play an instrument, draw, cook something new, paint, mess with gardening. These are release valves that turn energy into creation. Here's the kicker. When you make something, the pleasure lasts longer because it comes with pride, not a hangover. Real social connection. Digital isolation feeds compulsion. Get out of the house more. Grab coffee with friends, drop by to see family, or just take a walk around the neighborhood. Even chatting with the clerk at the corner bakery helps you remember life doesn't only happen on a screen. Real relationships are an antidote to cheap dopamine. Stimulus hygiene. If you fall asleep with your phone in your hand, you wake up already behind. Set simple barriers. Charge your phone outside the bedroom. Use app timers for social media. Set a nighttime screen ceiling. Swap 30 minutes of endless scrolling for a light book, a short walk, or even tidying up. Your environment has to help, or you'll slide back into autopilot. Presence rituals. Set aside 10 minutes a day to unplug from everything. Full silence works, or journal 3 simple questions. What did I feel today? What did I avoid feeling? What will I do when it hurts again? This ritual creates a pocket of clarity the daily rush can't. That's where you start to notice desire isn't an order. It's a signal. Desire was never the enemy. It's just a messenger trying to get your attention. The problem is the media learned to shout louder, cranking up your impulses until you think you've got no choice. But you do. When you learn to integrate your shadow, you start taking the wheel of your own life again, and you realize you don't have to ride shotgun to your urges anymore. Now, here's my invite. When do you catch yourself using pleasure as anesthesia? Maybe in that late-night doom scroll before bed, when you take it out on food, or when you bury yourself in tasks just to avoid the quiet. Naming it is the first step. Drop it in the comments, because when you speak it, you hear yourself too. Tell me this, what are you willing to try today? A 90-second pause when the urge hits, just watching it pass? Or 10 minutes of silence? No phone. To feel what's actually happening inside you, you don't have to do everything at once. Pick one, and notice how much difference a simple move can make. Remember, you don't need to punish yourself or chase perfection. You just need to listen. When ignored, desire screams. When acknowledged, it settles. It didn't show up to wreck you. It's pointing to places that still hurt and deserve care. If this video made sense, if it brought a little clarity, hit like, subscribe, and tell me which part hit you the hardest. I'd love to read your take. And send this to someone stuck in the just one more loop. It might be the quiet hug they didn't know they needed.